Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Straw Hat DXD by M1LoXD. In the battle against Kaido, Luffy falls of the island of Onigashima, and he is accidentally transported to another world. How will he find his way back? Huge shout-out to all the warlords of this channel. Want to stand among legends? Join the channel membership and show your support. Adios!
We start our story in the One Piece universe. A young man with black hair and a straw hat was falling off a massive floating island called Onigashima after he had lost against Kaido again. As he was falling, a strange disturbance could be seen forming in the water. Right before he touched the water, lightning struck, hitting the straw hat wearing young man and engulfing his body. Boom, huh? What the hell was that? A massive man who looked like a dragon asked himself. This was the captain of the beast pirates. Kaido of the beasts. He shrugged. Ah well, whatever it was, it doesn't have anything to do with me. In the ocean, the red portal suddenly disappeared and the young man with the straw hat was nowhere to be seen. DXD universe. It was the evening just after school. 5 not-so-normal people were sitting in a room. The first was a beautiful girl with long crimson hair, green eyes and a great figure. She was the heiress of the Gremory clan, Rias Gremory. The next was another attractive girl with long black hair tied in a ponytail with purple eyes and a figure that didn't lose to the first girl. She was even bigger in a certain area. She was Rias' queen and best friend, Akano Himejima. The third was a rather short girl with short white hair, her name being Kaneko Tojo. The fourth was a handsome boy with blonde hair and blue eye and his name was Kiba Yuto. The fifth was an average-looking boy with brown hair and brown eyes. His name was Naruto Uzumaki. They were casually hanging out in their club room, doing nothing of real importance when the room shook, a loud noise interrupting their peace. From the window, a cloud of smoke could be seen in the distance. "What was that noise?" asked Issei, panicking. "I don't know," said Kiba, looking around on high alert. "Look," said Akano, pointing towards the window. "There's smoke outside." "Let's go check it out, but be on guard," said Rias, assuming command. Right. Once they got outside and the smoke disappeared, they all looked to see what was there and they were shocked to see a young man with a straw hat passed out on the ground in the middle of a small crater. "Look, there's a person over there," said Kaneko, pointing out the obvious. "He looks like he's been through a tough fight," said Naruto as he took in the stranger's injuries, getting a nod from Kiba. My, he looks rather cute," Akano said with a smile. Rias shook her head at her queen's antics. "Let's take him inside to check up on him," said Rias. "Okay," they all said in unison. After taking him inside, Rias took him to a private room to start healing him, though not before she told her peerage they could go home, explaining that healing him would take all night. He was hurt quite badly, and Devil's healing wasn't effective enough. As she undressed to heal him, she looked at him, blushing slightly. She had to admit to herself that Akano was right. He was indeed cute. The next morning the young man slowly started to wake up, his eyes fluttering open slowly. He groaned, taking a few moments before he was fully awake. He looked around the strange place. "Where the hell am I?" he asked himself before his hand quickly flew to his head, checking for his hat. He was glad to see it was still there. Now fully awake, and his hate still secured, Luffy took in the room that he was in, noting a busty red-haired girl sleeping right next to him. He stared at her intensely, trying to figure out if he knew her right as she began to wake up. He didn't avert his eyes but kept staring as she looked back at him, opening her mouth to speak. "Oh, you're awake?" she asked kindly. Who the hell are you?" Luffy asked, brash as ever. "And where am I?" "I'll answer your questions in a bit, but can you wait until some people get here? I have a few questions to ask myself, and I prefer to not repeat anything again," she said, standing up and began to dress up. "Okay," he said, a little annoyed that he had to wait. An hour later, all the others arrived and saw that the young man was wide awake. They were happy that he was all right already, curious about him and where he came from. "All right, now that we are all here, we can get to introductions," said Rias, smiling at the young man. They all introduced themselves and told him that they were devils, not humans. To prove it, they showed him their wings. Luffy looked at them in amazement. He didn't know devils existed, only hearing the word from devil fruit and Robin's nickname. "Alright, now that you know who we are, it's your turn to introduce yourself," said Rias. He looked at them and smiled his usual wide smile, making the girls blush. "I'm Monkey D. Luffy, and I'm the man who gonna be the king of the pirates," he announced in his usual upbeat tone while putting his hat on his head. "King of the pirates?" asked Rias in surprise and confusion. "What is that?" asked Akano, having not heard of this title before. The King of Pirates is a pirate that has sailed across the world and has attained the One Piece and obtained wealth, fame, and power. He is the freest man in the world, said Luffy happily. "So you're a pirate?" asked Kiba unsurely. The concept of pirates in modern days wasn't popular, and most would think about software pirates if they heard the word. "Yes, I am," he said bluntly. They all just looked at each, indicating they don't fully believe him. Ignoring the pirate's comment for the moment, Rias asked, "So, how did you get here? And why were you so beaten up?" "I don't know how I got here, but I was fighting one of the emperors of the sea, Kaido." Luffy trailed off for a moment as he realized that something was wrong. "Oh no, Kaido. I completely forgot about him," he screamed, beginning to panic. They were all startled by the sudden change in mood and started wondering who this Kaido guy was and why was Luffy so worked up about him. "Who's Kaido?" asked Naruto. "He's one of the emperors," Luffy replied as if it explained everything. "What's an emperor?" asked Kiba. Luffy looked at them as if they were idiots for not knowing before he just decided to explain the system of his world except devil fruits and hockey. Of course, the explanation wasn't thorough, given who Luffy is, and had a lot of "it's a mystery" sprinkled in it. "Wow," they all said, impressed and shocked by the information, though they also began to realize that Luffy wasn't exactly from around the town. Luffy got up and punched his fists together. "Yosh, it's time to go back," he said, smiling his usual smile, ready to face Kaido again. "Where are you going, Luffy?" asked Rias, looking at the young man who was ready to dash off. "I'm going to kick Kaido's ass and save the land of Wano," he said, getting ready to leave. "Wait, Luffy," yelled Rias. "What is it?" he asked, getting annoyed at being stopped. "Luffy, pirates don't exist here," Rias said. "Huh, what are you talking about?" Luffy asked, getting confused. "Luffy, pirates haven't existed here," she repeated again. "In fact, most of what you talked about isn't something that exists." Luffy now was more confused than a 9-year-old looking at a 12th grade maths equation. "What do you mean pirates don't exist?" Ash was about to speak. Akano, who was in deep thought, spoke first. "Boucho, I think Luffy isn't from this world." "What do you mean, Akano?" asked Rias, though she had an inkling of what her queen was going to say. "I think that lightning might have taken Luffy out of his dimension and into ours." "That makes a lot of sense if you think about it," said Naruto, and Kiba nodded. "That does sound like a possibility, but how can we make absolutely sure?" asked Rias. Dimension travel wasn't something normal or heard of after all. "Let's ask him," said Akano. "Ask him what?" asked Rias. Akin smiled. "You'll see," said Akano. Akano walked over to Luffy, who was staring at them, and started asking basic geography questions. "Luffy, do you know how many continents there are?" "What are continents?" he asked. "Huh, interesting," Akano said, having not expected that answer before she asked another one. "Country you're from?" "I'm from Fuchsia Village, on Dawn Island." Akano asked a few more questions before she said, "Oh, okay. Thank you, Luffy," bowed Akano as she walked to the others. You're welcome," said Luffy, unsure why she asked him all of that. "Boucho, did you hear where he said he's from?" asked Akano. "I did," Rias answered. "That place doesn't exist anywhere," Akano said with a small smile. "So, he really is from another dimension," said Rias. "Hey, can I go now?" Luffy said, looking annoyed. "Not yet, Luffy," Rias said. "Why?" he whined. Akano walked to him again, and in the kindest tone, she started explaining. "Luffy, you're not in your world anymore," she said. "This is another world. Pirates and everything else you said doesn't exist here." "Huh, what are you saying?" he asked, starting to panic. "She is saying that lightning which hit you might have broken the dimensional gap and brought you here by accident," said Rias. Luffy looked at them confused. Seeing this, they just explained to him what was going on in simpler words. "Oh, so it's a mystery place," said Luffy, now understanding it in a way. "Wait, doesn't that mean I can't go back?" "Not necessarily," said Akaino. Luffy looked at her in question. "With my lightning powers and some magic, I can possibly recreate the lightning bolt and send you back home," said Akaino. "Really? That's so awesome," shouted Luffy in excitement. "Yes," she said with a smile at his childlike joy. Luffy in excitement jumped to hug her, which shocked everyone and made Akaino blush. "Alright, then let's do this," said Luffy. "I can't do it right now," said Akaino. "Why?" Luffy asked. "It takes a tremendous amount of energy to do that spell, so I need time to gather enough to do it. But I have to go now and help my friends," he said, frustrated at being unable to do anything. "It's okay since you are in a dimension other than yours. Time is probably on hold or is going really slow, so you have a lot of time to get back," said Akaino. "Really? That's awesome," said Luffy, smiling again. "For the time being, you can stay with us and we can take care of you," said Rias, giving him a warm smile. "Really?" asked Luffy with a smile. "You're so nice." "Of course," said Rias, blushing slightly, and with that, it was decided that Luffy would live with Rias till he finds a place to stay. The next morning they were all sitting in the occult club waiting for Rias and Luffy to show up. After about 10 minutes of waiting, the doors finally opened and Rias along with Luffy walked in. "What took you so long?" asked Akaino. "Sorry I am late, it just took me a while to wake up," Luffy Rias responded. They all looked at each other in confusion and finally stared back at Luffy, but he was just standing there smiling. Anyway, Luffy Rias looked at Luffy. "What?" he asked, looking back at her. "I think you should join our school so we can better take care of you," said Rias. "Sure, but what's a school?" asked Luffy. They all fell in anime style to Luffy's question. Akaino stood up and explained to Luffy what a school was and what they did there. Once she finished, he looked at her in a face of realization. "Oh, I see what it is now," Luffy said. "Sounds kinda boring," he quickly remarked. They all had a sweat at the back of their head and had blank expressions on their faces. "Whatever, as long as you join it's fine," she said with a dazed look. "We had to go to class now," said Kiba, reminding everyone. They all stood to leave, and right before they left, Rias told Luffy he can go around town to get used to it because his first day would be tomorrow. He smiled and gave her a nod. She blushed a bit and left. "Alright, it's time to on a mini adventure," Luffy said. He jumped out the window and started walking around to see the new place. As he was walking around, he was amazed by how big everything was. While walking, he felt a bit uncomfortable because people were staring at him. "Why are these people looking at me funny?" he thought to himself. People were looking at Luffy, saying he was wearing weird clothes. Luffy is still wearing the same clothes he was wearing when he was fighting Kaido. He decided to ignore what they were saying and accidentally bumped into someone while walking. "Ouch!" cried a girl with long blonde hair, beautiful green eyes and wearing a nun outfit. "Oh, are you okay?" Luffy asked, helping her up. "Oh, I am okay," she said, getting up. When she looked at Luffy in the eyes and froze. Are you okay?" Luffy asked. She shook her head a little and quickly responded. "Oh yes, I am fine, thank you very much." "You're welcome," Luffy said, smiling. Again she looked at Luffy and froze. "Are you sure you're okay?" "Oh yes, I am fine, it's just you're the first person who's been this kind to me," she said in a low voice. "What was that?" Luffy asked her. "Oh, it's nothing," she said, a bit flustered. "Okay," Luffy said and began to walk away. "Wait," she yelled. Luffy looked back. Can you help find my way to church? You see, I am new to this town and I can't seem to find my way to the church I was appointed to," she said. "Sorry, can't help ya," he said with a bland face. Why?" she said, pouting. "I am new to this place too, so I don't know what or where the church is." Luffy said. "Oh," she said, looking down in disappointment. "Yosh," Luffy said, startling the girl. She looked at him and he put one hand on waist and the other pointed at the sky and said, "Alright, let's go find that church," Luffy said, smiling. She looked at him with hopeful eyes and teared up a little. "You would help me find the church?" "Thank you, I was having a look around myself, so it's okay, right?" "Oh, my name is Asia Argentino," she said, bowing a little. "I am Monkey." He smiling. "Nice to meet you, Luffy-san." After getting familiar with each other, they walked around asking for directions. They were walking while talking and were walking past a park. "So Luffy-san, what is your dream?" Asia asked Luffy. Luffy paused for a sec and took off his hat. He stared at for a sec, then put back on with a smile and said, "My dream is to become the king of the pirates," he said. Asia couldn't do anything but stare at how determined he looked, but was brought out of her thoughts when she heard a kid crying. She looked around and saw a kid on the floor holding his knee while crying. She walked over to the boy and comforted the boy. "A big boy like you shouldn't cry over a scrape. Don't worry, it's gonna be fine here." She put her hands over the boy's knee and a green light appeared, healing the boy's leg. "There you go, much better, right? Go play with your friends now," she said with smile. She got up and walked over to Luffy. "All done now," she said, smiling. While they were walking again, she looked at Luffy, who was about to say something, but she spoke before he could. "You must be surprised, huh?" she said. "Are you kidding? That was so cool. How did you do it?" Luffy asked Asia with stars in his eyes. Asia giggled at Luffy's reaction and told him that it's a gift God has blessed her with. Luffy was a bit confused by her response and just smiled. A few minutes later, Asia saw the church and they headed towards there. On their way, Luffy noticed it was getting dark and stopped. "Sorry, Asia, but I have to go," Luffy said to her. "Oh, do you really have to go? I was gonna treat you to some tea as thanks," she said to him. "There's no need to thank me. Besides, that's what friends are for," said Luffy with a smile. After she heard what Luffy said, she looked at him with hopeful eyes and muttered, "Friends? We are friends, aren't we?" Luffy looked at her. "Yes," she said with a bright smile. "All right, then see you later, Asia," Luffy said with a smile while running back to the occult club, waving his hand. Asia smiled and waved back at him. Once he was out of sight, she held her hands to her chest and muttered, "My first friend back at the occult club." "Luffy, where were you?" Rias asked him, a little mad but mostly worried. "Sorry, I was walking around town and met this girl who asked me to help her find a church," said Luffy. "Luffy, did you just say church?" asked Rias. "Luffy, you must never go near that church again," said Rias seriously. "Why?" asked Luffy. Rias explained everything to Luffy about the devils, the fallen angels and the angels and the war. Luffy didn't understand much but got the basics of it and said he'll try and not go to the church. Rias, knowing a little of how stubborn Luffy was, just took it and left it there. The next day, Luffy and Rias go to school. The girls looked at him and thought he was cute and wondered if he's new so they could have the opportunity to show him around, but they saw Rias walking next to him and they couldn't approach him. The school day went as normal, but Luffy fell asleep in all his classes because he was bored. After the bell rings, Rias asked him to come to the occult club to discuss something important. When he got to the club, all of them were already there and waiting for him. "Alright, I am here," said Luffy. Rias looked at him and smiled. "Alright, Luffy, I have an important question to ask you," said Rias, a little serious. "What is it?" Luffy asked. Rias walked closer to him and asked, "Monkey will join us and become a devil and serve under me as one of my loyal servants." Luffy just looked at her and said, "No, may I ask why?" Rias asked, a little disappointed. "I am a pirate, I don't serve under anyone but myself," Luffy said. "I see. Then you don't mind just being our ally?" Rias asked. "Do I have to serve under you?" asked Luffy. "No, it's more like a friendship between you and my clan," said Rias. "That doesn't sound bad." "Alright, then I'll be your ally," Luffy said with a smile. With that, Rias went to Luffy and put her magic clan symbol on his left pec. "Alright, welcome to our clan, Luffy," Rias said with a smile. They all congratulated him and welcomed him with open arms. They were celebrating. They got a mission telling them that there's a rouge demon roaming around and they are to find and deal with it accordingly. After receiving the message from the Archduke, they teleported to a forest to Luffy's surprise. "Whoa, how did we get here so fast?" Luffy asked in astonishment. Akano giggles at Luffy's childlike reaction and Kiba quickly explained to him what it was and how it works. But Luffy, being Luffy, didn't really understand such complex things. They walked over to an abandoned building and started talking on their way. "Why are we here?" asked Luffy. "We are here to exterminate a stray devil," answered Akano. "What's a stray devil?" asked Issei. "A stray devil is a devil that went rouge and killed its master," answered Rias. "Hey Luffy," Kaneko called out to Luffy. "What's up?" Luffy responded. "Where did you get that big scar on your chest?" she asked. "I've been wondering that too," Akano said. "I've also been wondering too," said Rias. "Yeah, same here. Naruto joined same with me," said Kiba. Luffy looked at them and said, "I got when I was trying to save my brother from a public execution 2 years ago." "Oh wow, so did you save him?" asked Issei. "No, he died saving me from being killed by Admiral Akainu." "Oh, we're sorry for reminding you of such a sad memory," said Rias, feeling sad for him. Akeno walked over to him and hugged him. "I am sorry you had to go through that," she said, putting his head on her breasts, making Naruto flinch. "It's okay, I have good friends who helped through that time," he said with a smile, charming Akeno. "Enough you two, we have some important matters to take care of," said Rias. "Okay," Akeno said, reluctantly letting go of Luffy. They continued walking until they got to the abandoned building. Once they got there, Rias explained to Luffy and Naruto about the game chess and their roles, except Luffy, who was an ally. Rias told everyone to be on guard because it could come out of anywhere and attack them, so they should stay vigilant. Luffy walked deeper in the building and used his observation haki to sense where the devil was. Once he spotted it, he looked at them and pointed at the pillar in the dark. "What are you pointing at?" Luffy asked Rias. "It's over there," Luffy said. "What's over there?" asked Akeno. Before Luffy could answer, a seemingly naked lady with massive boobas appeared from where Luffy was pointing. "Now what is that smell?" said the naked lady. "Luffy, get behind me quick," Rias said, pulling Luffy over to her. "It smells so wonderful, so captivating, so innocent," she said with a deranged smile while staring at Luffy. Naruto looked at the lady with a perverted look and was happy to see big boobas. Luffy looked at her and questioned why she wasn't wearing clothes. Rias walked forward a little and started talking. "Visor, for the treason of killing your master to fulfill your selfish desires, Rias Gremory will end, you know, be gone or perish." "Come at me then, you Gremory slut," she said while groping her boobas. "Kiba," Rias called on it, he said, and went out of sight. "Whoa, he disappeared," Naruto said in amazement. "He didn't, he just moved really fast. As a knight, his attribute is speed and he's really good with his sword," said Rias. Kiba reappeared and cut off Visor's arms. Next was Kaneko, who just stood there and let herself get eaten by the monster, but just reopened it and gave it a punch that broke all of its teeth. Finally it was Akeno's turn, and with a sadistic smile she started walking over to the monster. As she was walking, one of Visor's limbs leapt to attack Rias, but Luffy quickly hit it away with a punch. Rias looked at Luffy with a blush and a face of shock and thought to herself, "He's strong." She stood up and asked Akeno to finish the job. Akeno started using lightning and attacked Visor. "First you looked at my Luffy-kun the wrong way, now you attack my Buchu. That will have dire consequences," said Akeno. She threw a big lightning attack and it fell to the ground. Rias told her to stop and stood in front of Visor. "Any last words?" asked Rias. "Screw you," said Visor. With that, Rias started charging up a spell. "Game over," said Rias and threw the attack, killing Visor instantly. "That was so awesome," Luffy said with stars in his eyes. "Glad you liked it, now let's go home," Akeno said with a smile. Before they could leave, Rias called for Luffy and Issei. "What is it, Prez?" asked Issei. "I need you two to do a job before you can go home," said Rias. "Alright, sure," said Issei. Luffy, on the other hand, was not so content with going, but Rias threatened to take away his dinner if he didn't go. "Alright, fine, I'll go, but you better double the food I get," said Luffy with a grumpy tone. "Alright," Rias said, and with that everyone left. Once Naruto and Luffy got to the house, they got in and Luffy immediately sensed something was off. When they walked deeper into the house, they noticed blood on the floor. "Is this blood?" asked Issei. When they looked at the trail, they saw a mutilated body and someone on the couch started speaking. "What a beautiful night to get some exercising done," he said with a disoriented smile. "Who are you?" asked Issei. "I'm Freed Seldom and I'll be the one to kill you," he said. He jumped at Naruto with a sword of light and a gun and shot Naruto on the leg. "Whoa, are you okay?" Luffy asked Naruto. "Hey, what's your problem? Why did you shoot him? It's not like he did anything to you, did he?" "No, he didn't. I merely shot him because he's a filthy devil, and you're next," he said while laughing like lunatic who ate a smile fruit. Right before he was about to attack, they heard a scream. "What hell?" Freed said, looking a little mad. When they looked back, they saw Asia standing in front of the mutilated corpse. "Welcome to the business, Asia," Freed said. "Why would you do this?" Asia asked, terrified. "It's what we do," Asia, Freed said. While they were talking, they heard a third voice speak. "Asia?" Luffy asked. "Luffy?" Asia said, shocked. "Oh, Asia, you're friends with these filthy devils?" Freed asked. "What are you talking about? I'm not a devil," Luffy said. "Stop lying," Freed yelled and was about to attack, but Asia stood in front of him. "Please let them go, Father," Asia pleaded. "You know the rules, Asia," Freed said, annoyed. "I know the rules, but there's good in this devil," Asia cried. Enough, Fried yelled and swung his sword at Asia. Asia no, Luffy ran towards her but she stopped him. No, Luffy, take your friend and run away, I'll stop him. Really now, Fried said and took Asia and threw on the floor like a rag doll. Luffy swing this got mad and was about to attack Fried, but Rias and the others pulled up and stopped him. What the prez? Naruto said, shocked. Kaneko was holding Luffy back from charging at Fried and dragged him to the magic circle. Wait, let me at him, Luffy shouted angrily. I'm sorry, Luffy, but now is not the time, said Akano. I don't care, we can't just leave her behind. I know, but he'd kill you, so we had to go, said Rias. I don't care, Luffy yelled. It's okay, Luffy, I promise we will see each other again soon. No, Luffy shouted before disappearing. Luffy was not having it and wanted to go back, but he exerted too much energy during his tantrum and fell asleep. Rias healed Naruto and they went home. The next morning, Luffy was watching Naruto in the park, still trying to do exercises. Man, this is boring, Luffy said, sitting on the bench. While he was sitting, he heard someone walking toward him and looked to see Asia standing there. Asia? Luffy? Whoa, you got yourself a fine one. Luffy, Naruto said with a jealous smile. A fine what? Luffy asked. You know what, never mind, I'm just gonna go home. Okay, Luffy, in a see ya later, he said, walking away a little grumpy. Wonder what's his problem, Luffy asked himself. So Luffy, do you want to hang out with me? Asia said, blushing. Sure, Luffy said with a smile. With that, they left the park and went to several different places and had fun. Luffy also used his observation haki to win her a stuffed toy. At the end, Asia told Luffy about her life and how she was raised and about her healing the demon and being called a witch. She also told him about her wish of making many friends. Luffy stood up and cheered her on, saying he'll always be by her side, which made her happy. But then a lady with long black hair, purple eyes, big boobas and a fine figure showed up. Asia stood up in panic. Lady Rainier, you know her? Asia Luffy asked. Yes, she's one of the evil people Father Fried works with. Come on Asia, we have to go now, Rainier said. No, I don't want to, Asia yelled. Rainier didn't want to waste time, so went to grab her, but Luffy stood in the way. You're not touching her, he said with angry face and tone. Rainier was a bit shook, but she stepped back and threw light spears at Luffy, who just dodged them with no effort. Arg, why can't I hit him? Rainier said angrily, but then she had an idea. She flew up to the sky and made a big light spear and threw it at Luffy. A crap, that's too big to dodge, Luffy thought. While he was thinking, he heard Asia scream, and when he looked at her direction, she saw Asia being taken away by Rainier. Asia no, Luffy yelled. The spear hit and Luffy managed to dodge it. 2 minutes later, a red magic circle appeared and Rias, Akano, Kiba and Kaneko appeared. What was that? asked Rias. Look, it's Luffy-kun. Akano pointed at Luffy on his knees punching the floor. They ran to him and asked what's wrong. He told them what happened, and after describing the girl that took Asia, they all knew who she was. But they couldn't do anything about it because they would be trespassing in enemy territory. But Luffy didn't care, he told them he's going anyway. Rias tried to stop him, but he was determined to save Asia. They all looked at him and spoke. Alright, fine, you can go, but we're coming with, said Rias. Really, thanks guys, Luffy said, smiling. Alright, we attack tonight, so be prepared. And with that, they went to go get Naruto to tell him about the plan and went to the club to prepare. We now see Luffy, Kiba, Kaneko and Naruto in the hiding in some trees next to the church. There's sure a lot of them, said Kiba with a serious look. Yeah, Kaneko replied. We need a plan before we can attack, said Issei. Yeah, but wait, where's Luffy? Asked Kiba. They looked around and saw him making a beeline for the church. Give back Asia, you jerks, Luffy screamed while charging at the door. Wait, Luffy, Naruto called. Well, that's one way to go about it, Kiba said with a nervous smile. Whatever, let's go before he gets himself killed, Kaneko said and started running toward the church. Luffy ran and kicked down the doors of the church. Give her ba, it's empty, he said confused. When he was looking around, Fried came out with his gun and sword in his hand. Welcome to the church where you and your maggot friends will spend their last moments, Fried said with an inhuman smile. Where is she? Luffy said in an angry tone. Oh, you mean that devil-loving slut? She's downstairs right beneath the altar we're standing on, Fried said looking at the altar behind him. Alright, Luffy said and started running toward the altar Fried was blocking. Ha 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 ha, you can't pass me, you fool, you can't EV-ka. Before he finished his sentence, Luffy punched him in the face, sending him flying. That was for hurting my friend the other day, Luffy said. Hold his hat. A few seconds later Kiba, Naruto and Kaneko ran in and saw the damage Luffy made. What happened here? Naruto asked. Oh hey, I just gave this guy a quick beating before he finished. Freed got up. How dare you do that to me, you devil s, shouted Freed. Hey, can you deal with this guy while I go get Asia? Luffy asked them. Sure, but are you sure you can take on a fallen angel by yourself? Naruto asked. Sure I can, Luffy said with a smile and bumped his fists to each other. Alright then go, we'll deal with him, Kaneko said. Alright thanks guys, Luffy said and ran in the altar. Not so fast, Freed said, but was hit by a table thrown by Kaneko. You're fighting us now, Kiba said, pulling out his sword. Luffy smiled and continued to run downstairs where he'd see Asia tied to a giant cross half naked and Rainier standing in front of her holding a green orb with 2 rings. Asia, I'm here, Luffy said with a smile while running towards her. You're too late boy, Rainier said. What do you mean? Luffy said in an angry tone. I already have her sacred gear, Rainier said with a smile. Luffy's hat covered his eyes and he walked to Asia and took down her off the cross. I'm sorry, Luffy said while placing her down carefully. It's okay, Asia said with a faint smile. It's over, Rainier shouted and was about to attack Luffy. But Luffy with intense speed used the color of arms and punched her in the stomach, sending her crashing to the wall, leaving her in a critical state but conscious. That's when several fallen angels appeared and started to charge at Luffy. Luffy didn't move and a strange energy burst out from him, and out of nowhere they all started collapsing one by one. Impossible, Rainier said in disbelief. Luffy walked to Rainier with his eyes still covered. Wait please, I was ordered to do this by my superior, so please, Rainier said in both fear and panic. You knew it was wrong but you still did it anyway, Luffy said with a frown. I didn't want to, but they said they would kill me if I didn't do it, Rainier said with tears. Luffy stood there and watched her cry and remembered that she going through something similar to what one of his friends went through. A friend of mine went through the same thing as you, except she was doing it for her family instead, Luffy said with looking at her with a bit of sympathy. Huh? Rainier said looking at Luffy. Yash, I've decided, Luffy said holding his hips. So you're gonna kill me? Rainier said, accepting death. What? No, Luffy said. Then what? Rainier asked. I'm gonna find your boss, kick his ass and save you from them, Luffy said, adjusting his hat. What are you, stupid? Why would you help me? I kidnapped your friend, Rainier said. You did it because you were forced to, right? And besides you seem like a nice person, Luffy said with a smile. That caught Rainier off guard and made her heart skip a beat. She looked up at Luffy with tears in her eyes and thanked him. Right in the middle of their conversation Kiba, Naruto and Kaneko ran in. Whoa, what happened here? Said Naruto, surprised by the amount of bodies on the floor. Hey guys, you're right on time, said Luffy smiling at them. Hey Luffy, did you do this? Kiba asked Luffy, amazed that he took out so many fallen angels by himself in such a short time with no scratch on him. Yeah I did, now help me carry Asia and Chain Lady out of here, Luffy said, running back towards Asia. Chain Lady? Naruto asked. Yeah her, Luffy said, pointing at the now unconscious Rainier. Naruto was shocked to see his so-called ex-girlfriend lying against a wall unconscious. He took out Rainier, Kaneko said, shocked. Luffy got to where Asia was and picked her up. Asia, you okay? Luffy asked Asia. I'm okay, she said, breathing heavily. Alright, just hang on for a little bit longer, I'll find a way to save you, Luffy said, running back to the church with Asia in his arms. Wait Luffy, are you sure it's okay to take her with us? Kiba said, pointing at Rainier. But Luffy was already long gone. Let's just take her, Kaneko said with a straight face. Alright, but are you okay with it, Issei? Kiba asked Naruto, who just stared at Rainier with a face full of terror and frustration. Yeah, it's fine, Naruto finally spoke. They took Rainier and ran after Luffy, but when they got to where he was they found on his knees and Asia lying on one of the benches. Come on Asia, you can do this, just hang in there, Luffy said to Asia, who was slowly closing her eyes. It's okay Luffy-san, I know it was a short time but I am glad to have made a friend like you, Asia said with tears in her eyes. Don't say that. Oh man, if only Chopper were here he'd figure something out, Luffy said in a frustrated tone. I'm sorry I won't be there when you become king of the pirates, Asia said. Of course you will, just hang on, Luffy shouted. Goodbye Luffy-san, and with those final words she died. Asia, wake up ASIAAA. At that moment Rias walked in with a Kano. It's not over yet Luffy, Rais said with a smile. What do you mean? Luffy asked looking at her. Do you know where her sacred gear is? It's here, Kaneko said holding the sacred gear on her hand and carrying Rainier on her shoulder. Good, now everyone stand back, Rias said while holding a chest piece in her hand. What are you gonna do? Luffy asked. I'm going to reincarnate her into a devil with this evil piece, Rias said with a smile. Reincarnate? Luffy asked. Just watch, Rias said. Rias did a spell and both the sacred gear and the chest piece went inside Asia's chest. Once they got in she slowly started waking up. Huh, what's going on, am I still alive? Asia asked as she looked at Luffy. You're alive, Luffy screamed and jumped to hug Asia. I know this is heartwarming and all, but what do we do about her? Kaneko asked putting Rainier on the floor. Oh yeah Asia, I know you just woke up, but can you heal her for me? Luffy asked Asia. What? Why? They all asked in unison. I had a talk with her and I made a promise to free her from those guys she works under and maybe have her join my crew, Luffy said with a smile. They all screamed again. In the end Asia healed Rainier and she awoke. Chain Lady, Luffy called and held her hand. This made Rainier blush and she started stuttering profusely. WWHWA, what are you doing? Rainier asked. I'm glad you're okay, I was afraid I punched you a little too hard there, Luffy said with a smile. Rainier looked at Luffy smiling and thought to herself. I never thought I'd meet a man as kind as him, but I'm glad I did, asterisk. So she's on our side now? Naruto asked confused. It seems so, Akano said with a smile. Rias walked over to Rainier and made her an offer to become a devil if she wanted to stay with them. She thought about it for a while smiling at her she agreed and another ritual was performed. After they finished they decided that since it was Luffy who brought them, Rias would get them a house and all three would live together, which the three of them gladly agreed to. As they were about to leave, three figures appeared, them being Donaseek, Calawarner and Middled. Huh, who are they? Luffy asked. They're my superiors, Rainier said shaking. So that's them huh? Luffy looked at them. My what a cute boy, Calawarner said looking at Luffy. He looks innocent too, Middled said with a smile while looking at Luffy. I just want to grab him and squeeze him tight in my arms, Calawarner said with a slight blush. Hey, get serious, Donaseek said walking towards Luffy. Are you the one who wanted to kill Rainier? Luffy asked him with an angry tone. Wow, he has charisma too, said Middled. You mean that good-for-nothing weakling? She's better off dead, Donaseek said with a scoff. After hearing that, Luffy lost it and gave him a sucker punch in the stomach, sending him flying to the wall. So strong, they all thought. Why, you insolent filth, how dare you touch me? Donaseek screamed as he charged at Luffy with a spear of light. Luffy jumped in the air dodging the attack and threw his own Gum pistol. Luffy's hand extended and hit Donaseek right in the face and knocked him to the ground, surprising everyone who saw what just happened. Did his hand just extend? Asked Issei. Donaseek stood up again in frustration and made another spear of light and attacked Luffy, who was dodging every single attack. Donaseek was actually getting really mad. So he stepped back and started charging a big attack similar to the one Rainier used, but only this one was bigger. With a smile he looked at Luffy and shouted, "Let's see you dodge this." Donaseek screamed and threw the attack. Luffy saw the attack coming and bit his thumb and started blowing in air like a balloon. Third gear. Gum giant pistol. Luffy's hand turned huge and punched the attack, dispelling it, and punched Donaseek straight into the floor, knocking him out instantly. Luffy stood in front of Calawarner and Middled and spoke to them. So do you want to fight too? Luffy asked them, a little shook. They both refused. Oh okay then, but tell your buddy never to come near Rainier again. They both nodded their heads and took Donaseek's body and were about to fly away when Luffy said something. Oh yeah, and tell your boss that I'm gonna kick his ass, Luffy said with a smile. Rainier, after hearing those, fell deep in love and started at Luffy with a smile. The two girls nodded and flew off, and Luffy walked back to his friends, but they all jumped him with many questions. In the occult club, Luffy was being flooded with questions like, how did your arm stretch? How did your arm grow so big? Are you even human? Luffy was being thrown with questions left and right. Luffy got annoyed and shouted. Okay, I'll answer your question, just stop coming so close to my face, Luffy shouted. Okay, I'll go first. Rias stepped forward. Alright, go ahead, Luffy said, now calm. How did your arm stretch like that? Rias asked. That's because I'm a rubber man, Luffy said, pulling his cheeks and stretching them. Whoa, they all said in unison. How did you become a rubber man? Asked Kiba. When I was young I accidentally ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi and it turned my body into rubber, Luffy responded. So it wasn't a freak accident with toxins and chemicals? Naruto asked, a little disappointed. What's a Gomu Gomu no Mi? Asked Akano. It's a devil fruit, Luffy responded. What's a devil fruit? Asked Kaneko. A devil fruit is a fruit that when eaten gives you a power but in return takes away your ability to swim, Luffy said, which surprised them all. Whoa, so those type of things exist in your world? Naruto said in amazement. Wait, Luffy isn't from this world? Rainerin asked. Kiba explained to her what happened and they think Luffy got to their world and the plan to send him back once Akano gathers enough magic power to do the spell. She understood the situation but didn't like the idea of sending him back at all. So can these devil fruits give you any power? Asked Rias. Yeah, but it depends on what fruit you eat, Luffy responded. What do you mean? Asked Issei. Before Luffy could answer they heard a knock on the door and several people from the student council walked in. Who are they? Luffy asked. They're the student council, Akano responded. The student wa? Luffy looked at her. Akano giggled at Luffy's reaction and turned to face at the student council and Luffy looked at them with a curious face. Hello Rias. The girl with glasses said. What can I do for you, Sona? Rias responded. Nothing, I just came to congratulate you for getting new members in your clan, she said with a smile. Wait, how does she know about that? Naruto asked. Her real name is Sona Seatree and she's not only the student body president but she's the next head of the Seatree devil family, Akano explained. That means there's more devils at our school? Naruto said, surprised. Do they also have cool powers too? Luffy asked with excitement. Yes, we do, said a boy with dark blonde hair. Hey, wait, aren't you the guy that showed me around the school on my first day? Luffy asked. He is, and his name is Saji Genshiro, my pawn, Sona said in a respectful tone. This is my pawn Naruto Hyodo, my bishop Asia Argentino and my rook Rainier. Whoa, you're a pawn too, dude? That makes us twinsies, Naruto said with a smile. PFF, don't put me in comparison to you and your group of sluts which are no better than distinguished devils like the Seatrees, Saji said with an arrogant smile. Take it back, Naruto said. No, mad? Aw, look, he's mad. You don't stand a chance because it took up 4 pieces, Saji said with the same smile. He took up 8 inches, Sona said. What? How can a bum like him take up that many? Saji asked, surprised. Anyways, Rias noticed you didn't say anything about him, Sona said, pointing at Luffy. Oh, him, he's an ally of my clan. Why don't come introduce yourself? Rias said as she looked at Luffy. Luffy walked forward and introduced himself. I'm Monkey. And the man who will be king of the pirates, Luffy said with a smile. That made all the girls blush, including Sona, who quickly shook head and fixed herself. What do you mean by king of the pirates? Sona asked. I'll explain that later, for now just know he fights for the Gremory clan, Rias said and crossed her hands. Is he a devil? Sona asked again. No, he human, Rias responded. Won't he be killed if he fights supernatural beings? Sona asked. He's surprisingly strong for a human, Rias replied with confident smile. Alright, so I assume you know why we're here? Sona asked. It's about the familiars, right? Rias said. Yes, we were planning to get our new member a familiar next week, Sona said. That's a problem because we were also planning to get our new members familiars as well, Rias said, still crossing her arms. How about a contest and the team that wins will get to go get familiars first? Sona proposed. Why can't we all go at the same time? Naruto asked. Because the master of the familiars only takes one clan once a month, Rias said. So what game do you suggest we play? Sona asked Rias. How about a friendly game of tennis? Rias suggested. They agreed to the game and the Seatree clan left. What's a familiar? Luffy asked. Rias explained what familiars are and what they do. They all showed their familiars and showed them their abilities. Wow, that's so cool, Luffy said in amazement. Rias smiled at Luffy and his innocent reaction. So can I get one too? Luffy asked with excitement. Sorry Luffy, but only devils can get familiars, Akaino said to him. Luffy frowned and in defeat and went on his knees. Kaneko walked over to him and pat his head. It's okay, I can let you play with mine, Kaneko said, patting his head. What's this, the kitty has taken a liking to Luffy-kun, I see, Akaino said. That did not sit right with Reiner and Rias for some reason. I just don't like Denpa without his usual smile, Kaneko said, blushing a little. Ahem, asterisk, let's go practice for the game, Rias said. The day of the game arrives and Rias and Akaino are wearing tennis outfits that are greatly showing off their figures. Same with Sona and here right-hand girl Tsubashi. Luffy, how do I look? Akaino said as she walked over to Luffy. You look great, Luffy said with a smile and a thumbs up. That made Akaino happy and Rias called for her so the game can begin. Come on Rias, you got this. Some fans shouted, show them who's boss. Sona, other fans shouted. The game began and although both teams went all out, even going as far as using magic, the match ultimately ended in a draw. So to settle the score they resorted to the next best thing, that being dodgeball. So the next day at evening the Gremory clan and the Citri clan both gathered in gym. Alright guys, give it your all out there and don't hold back, Rias said. How do you play dodgeball? Luffy asked. Oh right, I forgot you don't come from this world, Rias said as she held her head. Reiner gave a brief explanation on how the game is played and some of its rules. Oh I see, so I just have to catch the ball and hit the other team, Luffy said, bumping his fists together. Yeah, that's the gist of it, Reiner replied with a slight blush. Thanks for explaining that to me Reiner, you're the best, Luffy said with a smile. Reiner this time kept her cool and smiled back. Wait, before we start, are you sure it's okay if Luffy plays? He could get seriously hurt or possibly killed, Sona asked. I wouldn't underestimate him if I were you, Akaino said with a taunting smile. Luffy-sama wouldn't die to such weak devils, Reiner said, backing up Akaino. Trust me, he'll be fine, Rias said with confident smile. He may be human but he's capable of things unknown to this world, Kaneko commented. Alright, whatever you say, don't blame me if he dies, Saji said with a grin. And so the game began with the Citri clan taking out Kaneko and Rias getting a counter by taking out one of the Citri's girls. The game continued on like this until the only people standing were Rias, Luffy and Akaino on the Gremory clan and Sona, Tsubashi and Saji on the Citri clan. Luffy stood in front of both Rias and Akaino and told them he could handle it. He picked up a ball and threw it with great speed straight to Saji, who got hit in the face and passed out, surprising everyone. So fast, Sona thought to herself as she looked at the unconscious Saji. Sona and Tsubashi tried to throw counter-attacks but Luffy dodged it and caught the one thrown by Tsubashi with ease, eliminating her from the game. How did he do that? Sona said, shocked by Luffy's performance. I told you not to underestimate him, Just who is that boy? Sona said as she looked at Luffy. He's Monkey. Rias spoke, the man who will be king of the pirates, Akaino finished off. And with that they heard a whistle indicating that the game was over and Gremory team won because they have more players still in. Sona took an interest in Luffy and told him they'd meet again. And with that they had a little celebration before heading to the Forest of Familiars. Once they got there, an old man who looked to be in his late 30s wearing a cap facing backward, a white vest and some shorts appeared. Hey there, you looking for familiars? Well, I'm your guy, you can call me Toji, he said while standing on a tree. Who is he? Naruto asked. He's the master of familiars, Akaino replied. He'll help you find your familiars, Rias finished. He talks funny. Luffy laughed. If you're looking for familiars, you came at the right time, the full moon is at its full bloom, he said looking up at the moon. Can you help us find familiars for our friends here? Rias asked him as she pointed at Issei, Reiner and Asia. Okay, just follow me and I'll help you find your ideal familiars, he said and jumped down. So what type of familiars would you like? Toji asked them. I would like something cute and fun to be around, Asia spoke. I would like something that dark, that preserved, Reiner said. And I would like a really hot familiar with big ticks and really likes white guys, Naruto requested. That last one isn't something I can guarantee, but I'll see what I can do, Toji said holding his hips. As they were about to walk further, the girls started screaming and were covered by a green type of slime that started eating at their clothes. "Oh no, it's taking away my clothes. It's so slimy and naughty, Luffy-kun, please help," Akano said in a seductive tone. "Oh no, my skirt," Asia screamed. "So gross," Kaneko commented. "Oh no, my hands are tied and I can't use my magic, Luffy, please do something," Rias screamed in a sort of SXY tone. "Eating of girls' clothes is the power of this slime, but it gets old after some time," Toji said, crossing his arms. "Really, I think I found the familiar I want," Naruto shouted. "Luffy!" They all shouted. "Geez, I heard you, just hold still for a minute." Luffy jumped back and took a deep breath. "Alright, now Gum Gum Balloon." Luffy turned fat and blew air so strong the slime slipped off the girls' bodies. "I've seen many weird things in my time, but that has to be the weirdest," Toji said as he looked at Luffy. "My hero," Akano said as she hugged Luffy, pretending to be helpless. "Thank you, Luffy-sama," Rainier said with a blush. "Oh, thank you, Luffy-san," Asia thanked him. "Thank you, Luffy." Rias thanked him with a slight blush. Thanks," said Kaneko, trying to hide her blush. "Alright, we get it, he's the hero," Naruto said, a little mad. Luffy laughed and walked over to the girls to see if they're okay. Once he finished, he noticed some of the slime was still on the floor. "Hey, look, some, it's still here," Luffy pointed at it. "Really?" Naruto said, excited, and ran over to it. "Yeah, guess I didn't remove all of them, huh?" Luffy spoke. Right before Naruto was about to grab the slime, it got vaporized by a little blue dragon. "No!" Naruto screamed in sorrow. "Hey, what's that? It's so cute," Asia asked Toji. "That there is a baby sprite dragon," Toji answered. "It's so cute, can I have it?" Asia asked. "Sure, if you can take it," Toji said. Asia lifted her hands and the baby dragon flew to her and sat on her hands. "Aw, so cute," Asia squealed. "It seems to have taken a liking to you," Toji said, a bit surprised. "Can I have it?" Asia asked. "Sure, all you need to do is perform the ritual and it should be yours," Toji explained. While the Asia started the ritual, Luffy sensed something powerful and wanted to see what it was, so he left the others and started walking to the direction of the powerful presence. He walked until he ended up in front of a huge cave. "That strong presence must be in there," Luffy said to himself as he walked closer. Meanwhile, the others had now found a familiar for Rainier. It was a king raven and it just appeared out of nowhere. AD sat on her shoulder. "What's that?" asked Asia. "That right there is a king raven. It said that it doesn't show itself unless it sees a worthy master," Toji explained. "So you're saying it saw me as a worthy master and chose me?" Rainier asked. "Yep, it's a rarity too, so you better make it yours quick," Toji suggested. They quickly did a ritual for her and she named it Raven because it suited it well and the bird liked it. "Look, Luffy-sama, I got myself a familiar," Rainier said in a happy tone. "Wait, where is Luffy-kun?" Akano asked. "He isn't here," Naruto said. "I was wondering why it's so quiet," Kiba spoke. "Wasn't he here a moment ago?" Rias panicked. "Ruah-a-a-a-r-r-r-r," as they were panicking, a loud roar was heard and they all looked to where it's coming from. "Oh no," Toji said in shock. "What is it?" Rias asked Toji. "I think your friend has awoken the dragon of chaos, Karma Tiamat," Toji said with some fear in his face. "Tiamat?" They all screamed. "Who's Tiamat?" asked Issei. "Tiamat is the dragon of chaos, Karma, and the strongest of the 5 great dragons," Kiba explained. "So she's strong?" asked Issei. "Strong enough to destroy even the devil himself," Rainier said in shock. "Then what are we waiting for? Let's go help him," Asia cried. "Alright," they all said in unison and started flying towards the cave with Toji following close behind. "There," Kaneko pointed down at Luffy, who was standing in front of a huge dragon with white skin and aqua blue scales. "Let's go," Rias shouted, but they were stopped by Toji. "Why are you stopping us?" Asia asked. "Just wait, if you go in without thinking you'll die, so just wait and hope for an opening so your friend can escape," Toji said to them. "Back to Luffy. Who dares disturb my slumber?" a big dragon said as it emerged from its cave. "Whoa, it's a dragon," Luffy said with stars in his eyes. "Huh, devil?" the dragon asked as it looked at Luffy. "Hey, would like to join my crew?" Luffy asked. "Huh?" the dragon looked at Luffy. "Hey," Luffy shouted again. "Who are you, boy, and what do you want?" the dragon asked. I'm Monkey. And I want you to join my crew. Oh, so you're another devil who wants me to be their familiar? The dragon said with an angry tone. Huh, what are you? Before Luffy could finish, she attacked him with her tail and Luffy dodged by jumping in the air. It's over for you, boy, Tiamat said as she threw a blast at Luffy. Hey, I just wanted to talk, Luffy said as he dodged the blast. Tiamat didn't listen and threw more, but Luffy dodged them again. That's it, Gum Gum Gatling. Luffy threw a barrage of punches that hit the dragon and knocked it to the ground. With Rias, they were all shocked to see Luffy actually hurt Tiamat. Luffy-san knocked down a dragon? Asia said, shocked. That's my Luffy-sama. Rainier said with a smile. He's actually fighting Tiamat? Rias looked at Luffy with a blush. Era my Luffy-kun is showing that dragon who's boss, Akaino commented. I knew he was strong, but not this strong, Kiba spoke. Just how strong is he? Naruto asked. The only person who knows is him. Kaneko looked at Luffy with a blush. It's not over yet, Toji said with a serious look, and everyone looked to see. Back to Luffy and Tiamat. Luffy landed on the ground and walked over to Tiamat, but swung her tail at him, but he dodged it. She continued and threw many other attacks. Luffy dodged all of them and jumped in the air to avoid her tail whip. Now let's see you dodge this. Tiamat charged an energy ball in her mouth and shot it at Luffy. Luffy bit his finger and blew into it. Third gear. Armament Harding. Now Gum Gum Elephant Gong. Luffy threw his fist infused with Ryu, allowing him to dispel the energy ball and punch Tiamat, knocking her down and ending the fight. Guess I lost, huh? Tiamat said as she laid on the ground. Sorry, I got carried away, Luffy said with a chuckle. Hey, you can take me as your familiar now, Tiamat said as she looked at Luffy. Familiar? I can't get a Famfi said with a pout. Then what did you mean when you said I should join your crew? Tiamat asked Luffy. Oh, I'm a pirate and I wanted you join my crew. You decline if you want, Luffy said with a smile. That made Tiamat's heart skip a beat. That's what you meant? So this fight was for nothing then, Tiamat laughed. It was fun, I got to fight a dragon after all, Luffy said with a smile. Tiamat looked at Luffy and thought to herself, he's so strong yet and so innocent, his smile radiates kindness. Alright, I've decided he's going to be the man to have my kids. Tiamat began to glow and shrink. Luffy covered his eyes, and when he opened them again he saw a tall lady with the biggest mommy milkers, the finest physics and long beautiful aqua blue hair. Whoa, who are you? Luffy asked. I'm the dragon you just fought, Tiant said. You can change forms, Luffy said in shock. Yes, and I've decided that you're the man I want to have eggs with, Tiamat said as she walked closer to him. Luffy thought that she meant the eggs to eat and gladly accepted. Tiamat jumped in joy as she put his head on her biddies. Now to seal it, make me your familiar, Tiamat said. I'm human, I can't have a familiar, Luffy said to her. There's a way for humans to also get familiars, Tiamat said. Really there is? Luffy jumped in excitement. Yes, she said, licking her lips. How do I do it? Luffy asked her. Come closer, Tiamat said. When Luffy got close enough, she grabbed him and kissed him on the lips. It lasted for about 10 seconds before she pulled away. Hey, why'd you do that? Luffy shouted. Tiamat giggled and licked her lips, and right on schedule Rias and the others flew to them. Luffy, are you okay? Rias asked as she put his head on her bazonkers. That's cheating. Akaino shouted at Rias. Let go of Luffy-sama, Rainier shouted. Cow chest, Kaneko said. Aw man, I wish I was him. Naruto cried and bit his shirt. Rias let go of Luffy and looked at Tiamat. Who are you? Rias asked. I am the dragon of chaos, Karma Tiamat, and the familiar of Monkey, she said, surprising everyone, especially Naruto, because Luffy got another beautiful girl to his harem. I thought humans can't get familiars, Asia asked. There is a way for humans to get familiars, it's just not known, Tiamat said as she licked her lips. Damn kid, didn't know you were that strong. Anyways, it's about time for you guys to leave, Toji said, standing on a rock. Oh, it's time already? Thanks for everything, Toji, Rias said as she made a magic circle. They left the forest and Toji stood there with his hands on his hips. That kid is something else, Toji said and ran off. But far into the distance a girl was watching all the events that had transpired. The girl had black hair, gray eyes and a Lolita-figured body. This girl's name was Ophis. He's the one, Ophis said and disappeared. We are now back at the occult club where we see Luffy being questioned again by everyone, but this time it was calmer because they already had an idea of how strong he was because he defeated the dragon of chaos Karma without so much as a scratch on him. Luffy, how did your hand turn into iron? Asked Rias. Yeah, how? Naruto joined. That was armament haki, Luffy bluntly responded. What's haki? Reiner asked. Haki is the spiritual energy of a person, Luffy said as he looked at Reiner. Oh wow, Asia said in astonishment. So is turning your body into iron the only thing it can do? Kiba asked. No, there's 3 types of haki, Luffy responded. What are they? Asked Akano. Well, there's armament haki, observation haki and conqueror's haki, which is said to be possessed by 1 in a million people, Luffy said as he took a bit out some meat he was eating. What does observation do? Kaneko asked. Observation haki allows its user to sense the spirit of people around them. But if you take it to the next level you can see ahead into the future, Luffy said as he took another piece of meat from the plate. That's why you can dodge things with ease, Tiamat said while sitting next to Luffy. What about Conqueror's haki? Rias asked. Conqueror's haki allows its user to impose their will to others and knocking them out in the process. But if you take it to the next level you can infuse it within yourself and it's a great power boost, Luffy explained. So that's how you knocked out all of those fallen angels so quick, Naruto said in astonishment. What about armament haki? Asked Asia. What about it? Luffy asked. Can it be taken to the next level? She asked again. Oh yeah, it can, Luffy said with a chuckle. What happens when you take to the next level? Kiba asked. If you take armament to the next level it allows its user to emit the flow of haki in their body and projecting it by destroying the inside of what the user hits without touching it, Luffy finished. So you can basically break things without touching them? Naruto asked. Yeah, Luffy said as he laughed. Your world sounds so fascinating, I would love to see it one day, Tiamat said. Yeah, me too, Rias said with a smile. Me 3? Akano raised her hand. Me 4th, Reiner said as she raised her hand. Me 5th, Kaneko said with a slight blush. I would also like to come, Asia said. S2, Naruto said pointing at himself and Kiba. Sure, maybe I can introduce you to some of my friends, Luffy said with a laugh and took a bite out some meat. They sat for a while and decided to go home before it's too late. Luffy now lived in a huge house with 10 rooms, 10 bathrooms, a big kitchen, 2 bathrooms and a huge living room. With 3 girls to top it all off. Before they all went to bed Luffy demanded some food even though he had eaten earlier. After having what he called a light snack, which was enough for 7 people, he went to his room with a big bed that could fit about 13 people and TV which he didn't know how to use. Luffy sat on his bed and looked at the roof for a while and thought about his friends. Don't worry guys, I'll be back and I'll kick Kaido's ass. He thought and was about to fall asleep, but then a magic portal appeared and Rias came out. Oh hey Rias, what's up? Luffy asked her with a confused face. Rias walked up to Luffy and pressed him on the bed. Rias, what are you doing? Luffy asked her. Luffy, I need you take me, Rias said in a desperate voice. Take you? Luffy asked her even more confused. I need you to take my virginity, Rias said and started striping. She sat on Luffy's family jewels, with nothing but her panties on and put his hand on her biddies. Rias, what are you doing? Asked Luffy in the most confused face known to man. Am I not good enough? Rias asked in a desperate tone. It's not that, it's just I really don't know what you're doing, Luffy said with his hand still on her milkers. At that moment a magic circle appeared and a lady with white hair and a maid outfit came out and started speaking. Really Rias, you're here with this lowlife? You realize Searsex would be really disappointed in you. The lady with a maid outfit spoke. Who's Searsex? Luffy asked in confused tone. He's my elder brother, Rias said as she got off Luffy's jewels. You have a brother? Luffy looked at her. Yes I do, said Rias and stood in front of the lady in the maid outfit. Why Rias? Asked the white-haired lady. What I'd do with my body is my business and I will give it to whomever I want, and another thing, I will not allow anyone to call my Honori clan member a low-life even if you're my brother's queen, Rias said as she got dressed. Noted, the lady said and walked to Luffy who was sitting on the bed. Pardon the intrusion, my name is Graphia and I am also in the service of the Gremory family, said Graphia with slight bow. Okay, Luffy said looking at her. I'm sorry Luffy, I wasn't in my right state of mind, Rias said as she kissed his cheek. Luffy? You mean this is him? Graphia said a little shocked. Yes, he's the ally of my clan, Rias said while caressing his cheek. So the one you were boasting so strongly about and the one who possess unknown power is this small boy, Graphia said as she looked at Luffy. I will listen to what you have to say at my headquarters. You won't mind if Akaino joins us? Rias said as she looked at Graphia with a serious face. The priestess of thunder? Of course I won't mind. In fact, it's only proper for a noble to have her queen by her side at times like these, Graphia finished. I'm sorry for putting you out, please, Rias said and planted one last kiss on Luffy's cheek. Oh no problem, Luffy said with a smile. Goodbye Luffy, Rias said and left with Graphia through the magic portal. Once they left, Luffy looked at the door and spoke. Why are standing at the door? The door opened and Rainier, Asia and Tiamat walked in with serious faces. Luffy-sama, who was just here with you? Asked Rainier with a little bit of venom in her voice. Oh, that was just Rias and some lady I don't know, Luffy replied casually. And what were you guys doing? Tiamat asked with a dark voice. Nothing really, she just took off her clothes and jumped on me for some reason, Luffy said scratching his head. And with that they lost their cool and started rampaging in the house and demanding Luffy give them the same treatment he gave Rias. But after some time it was settled that they all sleep with him that night *, not in the way you're thinking buckaroo. The next morning they met Kiba and Naruto on their way and they all walked in the occult club and found Rias, Akaino, Kaneko and Graphia waiting for them. Alright, now that everyone's here so we can begin, Rias said as she stood up from her chair. But then a magic circle opened in the middle of the room and one guy appeared. And Riser has arrived in the human, just to see you my beloved Rias, Riser said looking at Rias. Who's this guy? Luffy asked. This gentleman is Riser Phoenix, a pure-blooded noble devil from the House of Phoenix. And the fiancé of the next heir of the House of Gremory, Graphia explained. What? Naruto shouted. Yes, they've been endganged for quite some time now, Graphia replied. Riser sat down next to Rias and as busy touching inappropriately making everyone mad except Luffy who looked like he was trying to remember something. That's enough, I'll say this again and I'll keep saying it, I have no intention of marrying you, Rias said as she stood up. I don't think you properly understand your family's circumstances properly for you to say that, Riser said with grin. I will not bring my family to ruin and I will not deny your intention to our name, but I will make it clear that whoever my husband will be is going to be of my choosing, Rias stated. Remember Rias, it is imperative for us to get married if we want to get more pure-blooded devils in our ranks, Riser said in a dark tone. Rias was a bit frightened and everyone else was about to do something when Luffy shouted. That's it, huh? They all said as they looked at Luffy. His name is the same name as Marco's devil fruit, that's why it Sunday said with a smile. They all looked at him with a sweat because he didn't realize what was going on. Oh, what's going on guys? Luffy said, finally noticing the situation. Riser ignored Luffy's idiotic remark and focused on Rias as she focused back on him. So Rias, what will it be? Do I have to incinerate everyone or will you come with me? Riser said with his eyes changing color. No, I won't come with you, Rias said slapping his hand away. Riser got mad and was about to slap Rias but was stopped Luffy who looked at him with an angry face. How did he get there? They all thought shocked at the speed of his movements. Let go of me, Riser shouted struggling to get out of Luffy's grip. Let go of him Luffy, Rias sighed and Luffy let go of him. Why you? Riser was about to hit Luffy but was stopped by Graphia who suggested they have a rating game to solve the problem. What's a rating game? Naruto asked. A rating game is when two clans fight against each other and the clan that wins gets to ask for whatever they wish for from the losing team, Graphia explained. So it's like a Davy back fight, Luffy said in thought. Riser has won numerous rating games and unfortunately for us we have no experience in such an event, Kiba added. Rias, are you sure you want to fight me? Rider said as he lifted his hand. A magic circle opened with several women appearing from it. He's got a harem too, Naruto said with tears in his eyes. I have 15 pieces, in other words a full set, and what do you have, a measly 9, Riser said with the evil grin. Naruto began to cry even more after hearing that number, and to add salt to injury, Ryder called over one of the finest girls from the group and kissing her right then and there while groping her melons, which made Naruto mad instead of sad. "You could only dream of doing this, boy," Riser said while looking at Issei. "You just wait, I'll get better at being a devil and I'll be the one laughing," Naruto shouted. "You can try, you brat," Ryder said while charging up a blast. "Hey, don't insult my friends," Luffy said walking up to Ryder. "What if I say no?" Riser shouted and threw an attack, but with great speed Luffy dodged, hit, punched in the face and slamming him to the roof, and he fell to the floor, shocking everyone present. Rias took the opportunity and told Graphia that she agrees to play the rating game, surprising everyone except Luffy, who smiled at her and she smiled back, making the other girls jealous. Graphia nodded and asked Riser if he also agrees to participate in the rating game, agreed and slowly got up. "You'll regret doing that, you brat. I, Riser Phoenix, have never lost a rating game and will make sure you suffer for this," he said, angry AF. "Guess this will be the first game you lose then, because I, Monkey, have never lost in a Davy back fight," Luffy said with a big smile while putting on his hat. "Then it's settled. In 1 week's time the Gremory and the Phoenix clan shall have a rating game in exactly a week's time, and as a side bet the winner between Riser and Luffy shall have Rias's hand in marriage," Graphia said as she walked closer to Riser and Luffy, who were facing each other. That shocked all of the girls including Rias, because Luffy was now fighting for her hand in marriage, which made her quite happy and the other girls burn with jealousy. And with that Graphia, Riser and all of Riser's women left, leaving the Gremory clan. "Luffy, are you sure you can take Riser on? He has a regeneration ability that makes him hard to defeat," Akaino said to Luffy. Luffy looked at his friends and smiled at them. "Don't worry guys, I promise that when the day comes I'm gonna kick his ass and set Rias free," he said and started laughing. We are now in the Occult Research Club with everyone holding some luggage with them, which confused Luffy because he wasn't told to bring any luggage, but he didn't care because he didn't have any other clothes besides his usual clothes and his school uniform. Rias clapped our hands to get everyone's attention and gave an announcement. "Alright, is everyone ready for the trip?" Rias asked as she looked at everyone. They all nodded in confirmation and grabbed what was left of their stuff before their departure. Rias, where are we going?" asked Luffy with a confused tone. "Oh right, you were asleep when we were talking," said Rias as she stood in front of everyone. "What were you talking about?" asked Luffy, now even more confused. "Since we have a week to prepare for the rating game against Riser, I thought we could use that time to train ourselves a bit before we head into battle," Rias said with a smile. "Oh, I get it now," Luffy said as he smiled back at her. Once they were all prepared, Rias made a magic circle and they were teleported to a mountain at the far outskirts of the city, and on top of the mountain was a summer home where they would be staying for the week as they trained for the upcoming battle. They started their training normally in the open, except Luffy, Tiamat, Rainier and Asia went into the forest and trained themselves a bit, with Rainier and Tiamat practicing their melee attacks on Luffy as they struggled to get a hit on him, and Asia practicing how to support them by healing them when they got injured. Later they were joined by Kaneko, who also joined in the struggle of getting a hit on Luffy, who was having a great time because it reminded him of when him, Ace and Sabo would go in the forest and train there. Soon Rias and Akaino joined in and were struggling to catch him, and not much later Kiba and Naruto joined. They went at his for the entirety of the time they had to train, and though it seemed as they were just goofing around, it helped them a lot as they got better at working as a team, and their speed, stamina, strength and melee attacks increased drastically. Soon the week of training ended and it was time for the rating game to begin. But the night before the battle, they went to the underworld and would spend the night at Rias's home, and everyone got to meet the Gremory family. "Whoa, that's a huge house," shouted Luffy in amazement. "Glad you like it," Rias said as she smiled at Luffy. They walked over to the massive house and were greeted by Graphia at the door, who walked them down a long hallway with lines of maids and butlers bowing to them. While they were walking, a man who looked almost exactly like Rias appeared from the top of the stairs. "Whoa Rias, that guy stole your face," Luffy in shock as he looked back and forth at Rias and the man. They all fell down at Luffy's remark, and the maid and butlers looked at him with a sweat on their heads. Graphia, with a sweat on her head, introduced everyone. "Ahem. This is Lord Cersei Chs, and he is elder brother of Miss Rias," Graphia introduced them. "Wait, so he's your brother? You guys look so much alike," Luffy shouted in shock of the situation. Sirzex walked down the stairs and greeted everyone and hugged his little sister. Hello everyone, I am Sirzex Gremory Lucifer, one of the 4 great devils and Rias's older brother. Pleasure to meet you all, he said with a gentle smile. They gave a slight bow except Luffy and Tiamat, who just stood there and watched. Brother, it's been some time since I last saw you, Rias said with a smile. Yes, it has been quite some time, and I see that your peerage is also doing well, Sirzex said and looked at everyone. Yes, they are, and we have some new members too, said Rias with a proud face. I see, Sirzex said as he looked at them again. Since you already know Akano, Kiba and Kaneko, why don't you guys introduce yourselves? Rias said as she looked at them. Hi, I'm Naruto Hyodo, one of Rias's pawns and future harem king. Naruto introduced himself. Hello, my name is Asia Argentio and I'm her bishop, Asia said with a bow. I'm Rainier and I'm her rook, Rainier said without much of an expression. And who are they? Sirzex asked as she looked at Luffy and Tiamat, who were just standing there and doing nothing. Hey, why don't you guys introduce yourselves? Rias said with a confident grin on her face. Alright, I'll go first, Luffy said as he walked forward. They all looked at Wok, and for some reason he looked so cool, as if he was walking towards a sunset, and then he stopped and proceeded to introduce himself. I'm Monkey. And the man who will be king of the pirates, he said proudly, which made him look even cooler, and some of the girls had nosebleeds. Nice to meet you, Luffy-san, Sirzex said with a nervous smile. Bekasuza, he didn't know what to say about the last bit of how Luffy introduced himself. Guess I'm next, Tiamat said as she walked and stood right behind Luffy and putting her breasts on his head, making Naruto a little mad and the other girls jealous. I'm the Dragon of Chaos Karma, Tiamat and Luffy-sama's family, she said with a grin directed straight at Sirzex, who had a look of fear. Did you just say your name is Tiamat? Asked Sirzex, panicking a little. And did you say that Luffy-san is your master? Graphia added on. Why, yes I did. Is there a problem with that? Tiamat asked with a grin of satisfaction on her face. No, it's just not what we expected, Sirzex quickly answered as he calmed down a little. Alright then, Tiamat concluded as she finished having her fun. Sirzex then looked at his everyone else and told them they would be escorted to their rooms shortly after they concluded a few things about the upcoming match. So they went to Sirzek's office and started discussing the conditions of the raiding game, which were that Tiamat can't join in the fight because she's too overqualified for fighting in such an event, which didn't really bother her that much since she was planning to sit the game out. The next condition was that since there was a side bet between Luffy and Riser, Luffy would be the one to fight Riser and no assistance shall be granted regardless whether dies or is badly injured. But Luffy can assist his friends in any moment. And the final condition was that the match would be broadcasted throughout the entire underworld and other factions would be able to stream the fight and watch. They didn't see a problem with the conditions and agreed to them. With that, they were shown to their designated rooms so they can spend the night. During the night, Luffy was sitting on the roof of his balcony and was just admiring the red moon when Rias appeared behind him. You can't sleep? Rias asked Luffy. I was just about to take a nap right here, Luffy replied. Won't you get cold? Rias asked. No, I sleep out in the open most of the time, so I should be fine, he said as he looked at the moon again. As they were admiring the view, they heard a crack, and when they looked to see where it came from, they were surprised to see Akano, Kaneko, Asia, Rainier, Tiamat and Graphia peeping at them. What are you guys doing? Luffy asked them. Oh, we were just wondering if we could join you in admiring the moon, Rainier said in a bit of a panic. Sure. Why not? Luffy said with a smile, and they all run and sat with them, and Kaneko sat on Luffy's lap calling it her seat for life, making the girls mad a little. Hey Luffy-san, Akano called Luffy. What's up? Luffy asked as he looked at her. I've been wondering why you always have that straw hat on you, Akano asked. This hat was given to me by a great pirate and I promised that I'd find him and give it back to him when I become a great pirate, Luffy said as he stared at the hat with a smile. They were all moved by Luffy's response and admired the moon a little more before they all fell asleep on the rooftop except Graphia, who went to grab a blanket and cover them before she went to her room and slept. The day of the match, the day arrived, and we are now in the waiting area where Rias and her peerage were confidently waiting for the match to begin. Before the match BD by Riser's parents, who begged for them to do their best to defeat their son because his cockiness is tainting their family name. Luffy promised to win at any cost and the bell of the match had rung for the game to begin. Once they were teleported into the ring, they immediately put their guard up as they were being watched by millions of devils. Searzex, who was sitting in a glass-like room with full view of the fight with two other devils next to him. The leader of the fallen angels who was streaming the fight and two angels who were also streaming the fight. Rias told everyone to stick together and not get separated from each other, but right as Rias said that, Luffy was already running to find Riser and kick his ass. They all had a drop of sweat on their heads and were then suddenly jumped by 7 of Riser's clan Mimibers and a fight broke down. Back to Luffy, who was running around looking for Riser, finally found, but he wasn't alone. Riser was standing on a pillar with 8 of his clan members lining up in front of him. "Hey, I thought this was a one-on-one fight," Luffy shouted. "Ha ha ha ha, you fool, the condition was that you were to receive no assistance from your friends. It never said anything about me not having assistance," Riser laughed mockingly. The crowd then cheered on for Riser. "Aw man, poor kid's about to die. He should just give up. Yeah, there's no way he can win against Riser Phoenix." These comments were heard and Riser started laughing again. "You should listen to them and give up before you die," Riser laughed. "Shut up," Luffy shouted, making the crowd quiet. "I don't care who you are or how many people lost to you. You insulted my friend and forced her to marry you. I won't forgive that," Luffy shouted, making everyone shiver and the girls blush a bit. "Now I am gonna kick your ass," Luffy shouted again. "That's enough, girls. Bring me his head," Riser shouted. They all jumped to attack Luffy, but he activated his Conqueror's Haki, knocking them and some spectators out cold. "What the?" Riser shouted. "How did he do that? What happened?" the crowd asked. Luffy started walking to Riser and he got a little scared. "What did you do?" Riser shouted. Luffy kept silence and kept walking closer and closer to Riser, who was now freaking out. "Alright, take this." Riser threw rapid fireballs at Luffy, who was dodging every single one of them. "Why can't I hit you?" Riser shouted in frustration. "You're too slow," said Luffy. "What?" Riser shouted. "Now it's my turn, gum gum pistol." Luffy's hand extended and hit Riser in the stomach, making cough out spit. "Did you see his arm? Did it just stretch? Who is that boy?" The crowd threw questions back to Riser, who was still recovering from the punch, looked up and saw Luffy running at him. "I'm not done yet now, gum gum Gatling." Riser received a fury of punches that would have killed him if not for his regeneration. Riser got up again and took out his phoenix wings and started flying. Luffy tried to hit him, but he was too high up to hit. "What's wrong, can't reach?" Riser laughed as he realized that Luffy can't fly. Riser quickly healed up and threw more fire attacks at Luffy, who was on the ground busy dodging the attack. "Haha, it's over, you'll eventually run out energy and it will be over for you," Riser laughed. "Crap, I can't reach him from here," Luffy thought. "Ha ha 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 ha." Riser kept on laughing and throwing attacks. "Grr. Crap, I'm getting hungry and this guy keeps throwing these attacks on me," Luffy thought, now in a struggle. "Oh, I see you're getting hungry. Let me end this for you so you don't have to suffer," Riser laughed and started charging a big fireball. "Oh no." Luffy thought. Riser threw the massive fireball at Luffy and created mass destruction to the ring. "Luffy-kun, San, Senpei, Sama." The girls screamed as the fireball engulfed Luffy. The crowd went silent after that. "Ha ha ha, I killed him so I win, ha ha," Riser shouted as he raised his hands in victory. The announcer was about to declare Riser the victor, but a voice was heard before he finished speaking. "I'm not out yet." A voice was heard. They looked around and when they looked at the dissipating dust they could see Luffy holding 2 rocks with his arms stretched. "What?" Riser shouted in surprise. "Luffy-kun, San, Senpei, Sama," the girls shouted in relief. "Gum gum rocket." Luffy shot into the air and was now on equal footing as Riser. "How?" Riser shouted in shock. "Damn, I gotta end this quick," Luffy thought to himself. "How is he alive? How did he survive that attack? What is he?" The crowd asked questions again. "I don't know how you survived that blast, nor do I care, but now I'll kill you for sure," Riser shouted and charged at Luffy. "Alright, it's time to end this now. Second gear. Armament HARDNING. Now gum gum Red Hawk." Luffy threw a flaming punch that hit Riser so hard he hit the ground, creating a massive pit, and because Luffy's punch was infused with haki, it messed up Riser's regeneration, causing it to greatly slow down in regeneration speed. The arena was filled with silence until the announcer spoke. "And the winner is Luffy," he screamed. The girls ran over and hugged Luffy for dear life, not realizing that he's suffocating. They finally let go and he caught his breath. That's when Sirzex flew down and personally congratulated Luffy and announced that since he won, Rias would now be his fiancé, making all the girls jealous, but they let it slide for now because she deserved it. As a gift, Sirzex summoned a beast with wings and an eagle head. "Whoa, what's that?" Luffy asked with stars in his eyes. "That's a griffin," Sirzex said. "What's it for?" Naruto asked. "It's like a chariot for couples," Sirzex explained. Without asking, Luffy climbed on it. "Hey Luffy, wait," Rias shouted. "Come on Rias, let's go," Luffy said as he lifted her on with him and smiled her, causing her to blush. "Alright, let's good," Luffy shouted, and the griffin flew off with Luffy and Rias riding it. Rias looked at Luffy as he smiled and had fun. She hugged his waist and romantically, flew the skies. "Rias may have this one, but I'll be next," Akeno said, and with those words alone an argument started and Naruto just cried because Luffy was living his dream. We are now in the underworld where Luffy is outside with Kiba and Naruto for a sparring match, while all the girls including Sirzex and Serafal are watching to see what Luffy can actually do with his power. "Alright, no holding back," said Kiba as he pointed his sword at Luffy. "Yeah, we're stronger now, so you don't need to go easy on us," said Naruto as he activated his booster gear. "Alright then, you asked for it," said Luffy as he put on his hat. "This is gonna end quick," the girls thought as they watched with a sweat on their heads. Naruto looked at Luffy with a smile as if he has something on his sleeve, which made Luffy really curious. "Alright, let's go," Naruto shouted and lunged at Luffy. Luffy looked at him with a curious face and jumped out the way off Naruto's attack. Kiba went in and was about to attack Luffy, but Luffy dodged it and jumped back, but then again Naruto came from behind trying to punch him, so Luffy jumped in the air, but Kiba expected that, so he summoned swords to rain down on Luffy. But then Luffy stretched his arm and grabbed onto the swords and skinned it on his head, knocking the swords away from him. Naruto then flew over to Luffy, attempting to throw a magic blast at Luffy, who was still in blocking the swords. Naruto threw the magic blast, but then Luffy suddenly disappeared. "What the?" said Naruto in confusion. "He just disappeared," Kiba said as he looked around. "Look, he's over there," shouted Naruto as he pointed at Luffy, who was staring at the with a smile. "Phew, that was a close one. If I never saw that attack I would have been in some big trouble," Luffy said to himself. "Arg, he's just toying with us," Naruto shouted in frustration. "Calm down Issei, we still have one more attack up our sleeve," Kiba said to Naruto, who looked back at him with a smile. "Alright, you ready Kiba?" Naruto said as he prepared for their final attack. "I'm ready," Kiba said as he got into position. "Alright, now boosted gear balance breaker," shouted Naruto as a glow covered his body, and when it dissipated he was wearing a dragon-like armor. "Wow, that's so cool," shouted Luffy with stars in his eyes. "You haven't seen anything yet, Kiba, now," Naruto shouted. "Right, now sword birth demon slayer," shouted Kiba, and a huge sword came out of the sky and Naruto held it. "Whoa, that's so cool," Luffy shouted as he started fanboying. "Right, now let's see you escape this," shouted Issei. Luffy looked up at him and gave a smile, accepting the challenge. "Alright, now demon slayer killer shot," Naruto shouted as he flew straight to Luffy with the sword aiming right at him. Luffy looked at the giant sword coming at him and smiled. He then jumped right at Naruto and turned his hand into iron and punched the sword right at the tip, causing a huge collision that made a lot of destruction. The collision lasted about 5 seconds before it burst, and both Luffy and Naruto were thrown to the ground at the explosion. "He stopped that with a punch," shouted the girls with their jaws dropped. When the smoke disappeared, Luffy was standing holding his hat on his head and chuckled. Naruto stood up from the floor and looked at Luffy and back at Kiba, then the sword. "I need to get stronger," Naruto said to himself, but then he heard a crack. Crack crack, they all looked around and eventually their eyes landed on the sword Naruto was holding. Crack 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 burst, both the sword and Naruto's armor burst like glass breaking. He broke the sword. They all shouted. Kiba stood there in shock as Luffy destroyed one of his most powerful swords, and Naruto was even more shocked because Luffy somehow disabled his balance breaker. Just how powerful is he? They all thought as they looked at Luffy, who was standing there smiling as if what he did was nothing. Later we see Graphia outside using her magic to clean the mess that was recently caused by Luffy. Naruto and Kiba and Luffy was on the roof eating a meal worth 20 people and watching her clean up. "Sorry for the mess," said Luffy as he took a bite out of some meat. "It's okay," said Graphia as she was still cleaning. "Really?" asked Luffy with a bright smile that made Graphia blush a bit. "Yeah, no need to worry," said Graphia as she was about to finish up. "Thanks, you're the best, Graphia," said Luffy as he ate. "Hey Luffy," Graphia called to him. "What is it?" Luffy asked. "How can you eat so much food?" asked Graphia with a curious face. "Yeah, we've been wondering that too," asked the girls as they appeared out of nowhere. Where did you come from?" Luffy shouted in surprise. "That doesn't matter," Rainier spoke, but Luffy was about to say something but was interrupted. "Just answer the question, Luffy," they all said in unison. "Fine," Luffy said with an annoyed face. The girls, including Graphia, got close to hear Luffy's secret, and Luffy just shrugged and started eating again as he answered their question. "When I eat I can fight more," answered Luffy. The girls looked at him with a disappointed expression on their faces. But then those expressions turned into smiles as they looked at him again and thought that it's just like him to be so dumb yet so kind. Luffy then looked up with a serious face, startling the girls, and looked at Graphia, who was still on the ground and giggling at his answer. "Graphia, look out!" Luffy shouted, and a magic portal appeared right under Graphia's feet, and a weird-looking man appeared from it and chained Graphia. "Hey, let her go!" Luffy shouted. "I am afraid I can't do that," the strange man answered with an evil smile. "And why not?" asked Rias as she got in a fighting stance. "Because sweet little Graphia here is the last living member of the Lucifuge clan, which is one of the most powerful clans in the underworld," explained the man. "What does that have to do with anything?" shouted Rias. "Oh, you see, it has to do with everything, because Graphia will soon be my bride, and because she's a Lucifuge she will give me lots of powerful heirs." The man laughed in a distorted tone. "Who are you anyway?" shouted Graphia, still in her chains. "I am the almighty Cruci Asmodeus. Pleasure to make your acquaintance," he said with a bow. "Whatever your name is, you better let her go or else I'll make you," Luffy said in anger. "We shall see," Cruci said as the magic circle glowed. "Wait, stop!" Rias shouted. "Luffy, help!" shouted Graphia. "I'm coming!" Luffy shouted as he jumped to punch Cruci, but he was a second too late because as the punch was about to hit they disappeared. "No!" Rias shouted with tears in her eyes. "Crap!" said Luffy as he punched the floor in frustration. Soon Searzex and the two boys came running out. "What was all that ruckus?" asked Searzex. Rias explained the situation to them of what happened, how it happened, and who the guy was and what he planned to do to Graphia. Searzex got mad and immediately sent out a search team around the entire underworld to find out where that guy took Graphia. We are now in Searzek's office where they are all waiting for further information on where Graphia could be. "This is so boring," said Luffy while lying on the couch. "I know, just be a little more patient and I'm sure we'll get something," said Rias as she was standing with her arms crossed. "Can't we just go look for her ourselves? That would be way more fun," said Luffy as he got up. "We can't," Kaneko answered him. "Why not?" Luffy asked with a pout. "Because we need to stick together so when we find out where she is, everyone can be informed," said Searzex as he got up from his chair. "Fine," said Luffy as he sat back down while crossing his arms and legs with a pout. A few seconds later one of the members from the search team entered the room and announced that they found where Graphia could be. "Really, you found her?" asked Rias with haste. "Yes ma'am, we have a team monitoring the location as we speak," the guy said. "Alright then, we'll be there shortly," Searzex spoke. "Alright everyone, get prepared, we'll head out in 5, Searzex spoke again. "Finally," shouted Luffy. "Don't get too excited Luffy," giggled Akano. "Yes, until we get Graphia back we can't celebrate yet," said Rias. Yeah, I get it," Luffy said a bit grumpy. They all prepared themselves and when the time came they went on their way. "Now with Graphia." "Let go of me you fend," shouted Graphia. "Sorry sweetheart, but you know I can't do that," said Crucy as he walked over to her. Once Luffy and the others get here they'll give you healed to pay, said Graphia. That's if they can find me, Crucy said as he touched her cheek. Don't touch me, shouted Graphia. Come on now, don't be so rude to your future husband, Crucy screamed as he tore off her shirt revealing her bra. Stop it, Graphia screamed in resistance. What a glorious body you have there. I can't wait until after our wedding, said Crucy as he admired her body. My body isn't for you to take over, Graphia protested. Oh, but it is. You see, in just a few hours you and I shall be married, and once we can make powerful heirs to overthrow the current Satan, said Crucy as he fixed himself. That will never happen, Graphia said as she looked at him with a disgusted face. You can think that all you want, but regardless whether you think that or not you shall, whether you like it or not, said Crucy as he started to walk away. Huff, you'll regret this, said Graphia in a silent voice. Now maids, get her ready for the wedding. The wedding shall start when I return. The maids bowed and started dressing up and preparing Graphia for the wedding, as she was still chained up and couldn't use her magic. Luffy, please save me, Graphia thought to herself as tears were forming in her eyes. Back to Luffy and the others, Rias and everyone else was flying out to where the location was, and Luffy was riding on Tiamat in he-dragon form with Kaneko, who was sitting on Luffy's lap as his legs were crossed. Man, this is fun, said Luffy as he laughed. I still can't believe he tamed Tiamat, Sirzex said with a sweat on his head. It's hard to believe he's human, Akeno giggled. Wait, he's human? Sirzex asked, a little shocked. Yes, you didn't know? Asked Rias. I'm afraid not, responded Sirzex. Well, I guess now you do. Rainier entered the conversation. Wait, then how can he stretch? Does he have some weird unknown sacred gear? Asked Sirzex. No, Asia also enters. Then what is it? Asked Sirzex in a confused tone. He ate a devil fruit. Rias answered. And what is that? Sirzex asked. It's a fruit that when consumed gives you a power, but in return you lose your ability to swim, answered Akeno. Wow, that's pretty interesting, Sirzex said with an interested smile. We couldn't believe it ourselves. Asia spoke with a giggle. So where can we find such fruits? Asked Sirzex. We don't know since they came from Luffy's world, explained Rias. His world? Asked Sirzex in a confused tone. I'll explain to you another time, for now let's just focus on getting Graphia back, said Rias. Sirzex had many questions, but he decided to put them to rest for now, and a few minutes later they arrived at a huge castle in the mountain that was hidden pretty well for its massive size. We believe Graphia is in there, said the guy. Thank you, Rias said to him. You're welcome, ma'am, the man said with a bow and left. Alright, now we need a plan before we go in because he could have set traps, Rias spoke. Alright, so what's the plan? Asked Issei. The plan is, Rias was about to speak, but then Rainier interrupted her. Hey, where's Luffy-sama? Rainier asked. Isn't he with Tiamat and Kaneko? Asked Asia. They looked around and saw Luffy gliding towards the hidden castle. Luffy, wait! Shouted Rias with Graphia. A few minutes had passed and Crucy came back when the maids had finished getting Graphia ready for the wedding. Oh my sweet Graphia, you look so beautiful, said Crucy as he approached her. Graphia didn't say anything but just looked at him with a disgusted face and struggled on her chains. Now don't look at me like that. You should be smiling at your husband-to-be, said Crucy as he stood next to her. As if I'd marry you, said Graphia with a scoff. You'll eat those words, Crucy said as he ordered for the wedding to begin. Back to Rias, they were chasing after Luffy, who was falling straight to the castle. Luffy! They all shouted. When I get my hands on that crew guy I'm gonna kick his ass, said Luffy as he falling in the building. Why can't he just sit still for 5 minutes, said Rias in frustration. That's Luffy for you, Tiamat said as she done in with Luffy. Not you too, Tiamat, said Rias with a defeated face. Guess I should join in too, Kaneko said as she rode on Tiamat. If Luffy-sama fights then I'll fight too, Rainier said as she caught up to them. I can't let them have all the fun now, can I? Akeno said as she joined them. Ah man, whatever, said Rias as she joined them. He's quite unique, Sirzex said to himself with a chuckle. Back to Graphia, the wedding had already began and it was time for the groom and the bride to seal it with a kiss. Come on now, don't be shy, said Crucy as he touched her cheek. Don't touch me, Graphia shouted, "Don't make me use force," he said as he forcefully grabbed her chin. "Luffy, please save me." Graphia internally thought Crucy was about to kiss her, but then they heard a sound. R. A faint voice was heard. Crucy stopped and looked around for the source of the sound. "What is that?" asked Crucy in frustration. "That scream, it can only be," Graphia thought to herself as she looked at the window on the roof. Luffy shouted as he broke through the roof. "What the?" Crucy shouted in shock. "Luffy!" Graphia shouted in joy of seeing him. "Gum Gum Balloon!" Luffy inflated himself to land safely. Crucy looked at Luffy confused at how he did that, but decided to ignore it and instead wondered how they found his hidden castle. "Alright, I'm here," said Luffy as he cracked his knuckles. "S2," announced Rias as they all landed behind him. "You know you could wait for us next time," Rainier said to Luffy with her arms crossed. "Sorry I got too riled up," said Luffy with a smile and a chuckle. "You're lucky you're cute." They all sighed. Crucy was now getting angry because his plans were ruined by this boy with a straw hat and a weird dress code. "How did you find my castle?" shouted Crucy. "Don't underestimate the power of the Gremory clan," Sirzex said as he walked forward. "Oh, so you're here too, huh?" said Crucy, unsurprised to see him there. "For your unforgivable act of kidnapping a member of another clan you shall pay with your life," shouted Sirzex as he threw an attack. "Haha, go ahead and try," Crucy laughed as a barrier appeared and blocked Sirzex's attack. "How?" they all said in shock because he blocked an attack from one of the most powerful devils in the underworld. "Haha, you'll never penetrate my shield, not even the great dragon Ophis can," Crucy laughed. "Damn, how do we deal with this?" Naruto said as he active. "You can try all day if you want, and if you'll excuse me I'll continue my wedding," said Crucy as he looked back at the chained Graphia. "What do we do now?" Asia asked. "If one the mouse can't destroy that thing, then what can we do?" asked Akano. They started looking at each other for ideas but came up with nothing, but Luffy just smiled and used armament to coat his arm, and they looked at him with confused faces. "Luffy-san, what are you doing?" asked Kiba as Luffy walked past them. "Now, Gum Gum Pistol." Luffy extended his hand and punched the shield, and everyone looked at him in silence. "You fool! If one of the mouse can't break the shield, what can you do?" Crucy laughed in a mocking tone. Crucy laughed at Luffy, but a few seconds after the shield cracked. "What the?" screamed Crucy in shock. Burst, the shield broke like glass and the pieces disappeared in thin air. "How did you?" Crucy asked in shock. Luffy walked over to him and Crucy was scared shitless as Luffy approached, but instead of beating him up, Luffy to Graphia bride style and carried her over to safety back to Sirzex. "Graphia, are you okay?" Sirzex asked her. "I'm fine," Graphia said with a smile as she looked at Luffy. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" shouted Crucy as he shot Luffy with a gun about 11 to 12 times. "Luffy!" they all screamed. "H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A." Crucy laughed as he walked to Luffy, whose eyes were hidden by his hat. Luffy smiled and looked up at Crucy, who looked like he'd seen a ghost when Luffy moved. Luffy repelled all the bullets that were shot at him and laughed. "I can't get shot, I'm made of rubber." Luffy laughed, much to the relief of the girls. "What kind of power is that?" Crucy screamed. Luffy then lunged at him, punched him in the face asterisk. Same way he punched the celestial dragon asterisk, sending him flying to the wall and knocking him out immediately. "No one messes with my friends," said Luffy as he walked away from the unconscious Crucy. Luffy walked over to Graphia and the group and saw that they were struggling to take off the chains that were binding her. Luffy looked at her and told her to sit still as he broke the chains without much of a problem. They all looked at him as if he were some kind of god. "Just how strong are you, Luffy?" they all asked themselves. Luffy looked at them with a smile and nonchalantly said, "I'm hungry, can we go eat?" They all fell at how he just wants to eat right after a serious fight, and they stood up and laughed because that's exactly why they loved him. So they all went back to the Gremory mansion and feed the black hole that they love much. As they were flying home, Graphia was sitting behind Luffy on Tiamat while Kaneko on his front, and Graphia whispered to his ear, "Luffy, thank you." she said as he hugged him from behind. Luffy just laughed at this and told her he'd fight anyone to save his friends. And Kaneko, getting jealous, scooched back and sat on Luffy and looked at Graphia with a pout. "Luffy-senpai is mine," she said with a pout. This made the other girls a little mad, but they let it slide for now because when they get home they have plans to seduce their Straw Hat boyfriend.